The silent response. The holographic projection of High Commander Zarkax filled the United Earth Defense Council chamber, his crystalline form pulsing with barely contained contempt. Your species has 24 hours to surrender unconditionally to the Nexarian Empire. Resist, and we will reduce your civilization to atoms. General Sarah Chen sat motionless at the council table, studying the alien's translucent body. After 15 years leading Earth's Xenopsychology division, she recognized something in the minute vibrations of the commander's crystalline structure: uncertainty. When the transmission ended, the chamber erupted into chaos. Military leaders called for immediate mobilization. Politicians demanded emergency evacuation protocols. But Chen remained silent, her mind racing through years of research on Nexarian psychology. Dr. Chen, President Rodriguez's voice cut through the noise. You've studied the Nexarians longer than anyone. What's your assessment? Chen stood, calling up her research data on the chamber's displays. The Nexarians are a crystalline species that evolved in an environment of constant vibration and feedback. Their entire society, from their technology to their military doctrine, is built on the principle of action and reaction. She paused, letting her words sink in. But we've already done something unprecedented. We detected their approach 3 months ago without their knowledge. And how does that help us against a fleet of 10,000 warships? Admiral Wong demanded. A slight smile crossed Chen's face. Because for the first time in their history, they're facing an enemy that saw them coming. And instead of the panicked response they expected, they're getting something far more terrifying. She gestured to the tactical displays showing Earth's military installations. Nothing. Absolute silence. You can't be suggesting we do nothing. Defense Secretary Patel protested. On the contrary, Chen replied. I'm suggesting we do something the Nexarians have never encountered. We vanish. Their military doctrine requires an enemy to react, to provide data they can analyze and counter. We deny them that completely. She brought up new displays showing the vast network of quantum tunnels and hidden bases humanity had been secretly constructing for decades. We evacuate every military installation, move our fleets through the quantum corridors, leave them facing empty bases and silent communications channels. No response to their ultimatum. No visible defense preparations. Nothing but silence. The room fell quiet as the implications sank in. President Rodriguez studied the data carefully. Their psychology. How will they react? Their crystalline bodies evolved to constantly resonate with their environment. Chen explained. True silence, true emptiness, is alien to their very nature. It will create psychological stress that their rigid military doctrine can't process. We turn their greatest strength, their need for predictable patterns, into their greatest weakness. The president's expression hardened with resolve. How quickly can we implement this? The quantum network is ready. We've been preparing for something like this since we first detected their civilization. Within 18 hours, we can have every major military asset relocated through the quantum corridors. On the surface, Earth will appear defenseless. And our actual defensive preparations. Chen's smile returned. Let's show the Nexarians that sometimes the deadliest response is no response at all. As the evacuation orders went out, Chen watched the replay of Zarkax's ultimatum. There, another subtle vibration in his crystalline structure, matching her documented patterns for suppressed anxiety. The Nexarians had expected Earth to respond with panic, with futile military preparations, or with desperate diplomacy. Instead, they would face something far more terrifying. The complete silence of a prey that wasn't afraid, that didn't react, that seemed to have simply vanished. The first phase of humanity's greatest deception had begun. Shadows in the void. First Scout Commander Valtek's crystalline form trembled with frustration as his sensors swept another empty military installation. The massive Norfolk naval base stretched before his scout ship, its facilities fully powered and operational, yet completely devoid of personnel or equipment. Impossible. he muttered, his crystalline edges sharpening with agitation. Power signatures indicate normal functionality, environmental systems running at optimal levels, yet no life signs, no ships, no movement. He initiated another deep scan, his frustration growing as it revealed the same maddening results. Aboard the Nexarian flagship, High Commander Zarkax received Valtek's report with mounting concern. "Show me the scan data again," he demanded, his crystalline structure vibrating with subtle frequencies that betrayed his unease. The holographic display materialized, showing dozens of Earth's major military installations, all completely abandoned yet fully operational. "Sir," his tactical officer's crystalline form pulsed with uncertainty, "we're detecting sporadic energy signatures that don't match any known human technology. They appear for precisely 2.7 seconds before vanishing completely." Deep beneath the Himalayan mountains, General Chen watched the Nexarian fleet's movements on quantum-encrypted displays. "Status report on Operation Phantom," she ordered. Colonel Maya Santos gestured at one of the screens, showing the complex network of quantum corridor movements happening invisible to Nexarian sensors. "The entire Pacific Fleet has successfully transferred to Quantum Harbor Delta. The Russian and Chinese fleets are proceeding through dimensional corridors according to schedule. The Nexarians are completely blind to our movements." A priority alert flashed across the main screen. "Nexarian scout vessel approaching Pearl Harbor," the AI announced. "Perfect timing." Chen smiled. "Initiate protocol whisper." Aboard his scout ship, Valtek's sensors suddenly detected a brief but powerful energy spike from the abandoned base. He immediately directed full scanning power toward it, but found nothing. His crystalline form flickered with growing distress as he added it to his report. Another inexplicable anomaly to join the dozens already documented. Throughout Earth's abandoned military installations, carefully programmed systems began their work. Lights activated in empty buildings for exactly 3 seconds before going dark. Radar systems powered up and down at random intervals. Maintenance robots appeared on security cameras only to vanish when Nexarian observers attempted to track them. In the flagship's command center, Zarkax's form darkened with frustration as he reviewed the growing list of anomalies. His entire military career had been built on the precise application of overwhelming force against predictable enemy responses. But how could you fight an enemy that simply wasn't there? "Deploy the main fleet elements," he ordered finally. "I want every human military installation scanned down to the atomic level. Find me something that makes sense." In her mountain command center, Chen watched the Nexarian fleet begin its careful advance. "They're taking the bait," she informed her staff. "Prepare Phase 2. Let's show them just how unsettling silence can be." Across Earth's abandoned bases, new protocols activated. In empty hangars, phantom heat signatures appeared and disappeared faster than Nexarian sensors could track them. Computer systems would power up, run complex operations for exactly 4.2 seconds, then shut down completely. Environmental systems created patterns of temperature fluctuations that seemed to follow non-existent movement. "High Commander," Valtek's report carried the harmonic distortion of severe stress. "We're detecting impossible readings. Human equipment showing signs of operation without human presence. Energy patterns that violate known physics. Request permission to withdraw to a safe distance for analysis." Zarkax's crystalline form vibrated with dark colors as he studied the reports. In all his years of military service, he had never encountered anything like this. The humans should have responded with resistance, with defiance, or with desperate attempts at negotiation. This silence, this emptiness, it violated every principle of Nexarian military doctrine. "Permission denied," he responded. "Continue your scans. There must be an explanation." But as his fleet approached Earth, Zarkax felt the first microscopic fractures forming in his crystalline structure. Tiny imperfections caused by the psychological stress of facing an enemy that refused to behave according to any known pattern. The humans had developed technology that could detect Nexarian ships weeks before intended. They had evacuated their military installations without leaving a trace. They had demonstrated capabilities far beyond what Nexarian intelligence had indicated. And now they had done something even more terrifying. They had simply vanished, leaving behind nothing but echoes and shadows. For the first time in his long military career, Zarkax faced an enemy whose actions he couldn't predict or understand. The second phase of humanity's psychological warfare was about to begin, and the Nexarians had no idea they were already losing a war they hadn't even started fighting. The psychological edge. Dr. Elena Santos stood in the quantum-shielded laboratory beneath Mount Fuji, studying the holographic models of Nexarian crystalline structure. After months of analyzing their biology, she had finally confirmed what General Chen's psychological warfare strategy had only theorized. The Nexarians' crystalline forms were literally resonating with their mounting fear and confusion. "Show me the latest structural analysis from the flagship," she requested. The AI complied, displaying a complex pattern of microscopic fractures spreading through High Commander Zarkax's crystalline body. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Their biological structure requires constant environmental feedback to maintain stability. The absence of expected stimuli isn't just psychologically disturbing, it's physically damaging." In high orbit, Scout Commander Valtek led his patrol through another sweep of Earth's orbital defense platforms. Every station they encountered told the same maddening story. Fully operational but completely deserted. His crystalline edges had begun to dull tiny cracks spreading through his form, with each inexplicable reading his sensors reported. "Contact," his sensor officer called out, crystalline form pulsing with excitement. Energy signature consistent with human vessels, bearing 047. Valtek's form brightened momentarily with relief. Finally, something tangible to engage. But when his ships reached the coordinates, they found only empty space and another impossible sensor ghost. In the Quantum Command Center, Captain David Chen, no relation to the general, watched the Nexarian patrol's increasingly erratic movements. "They're starting to break formation," he reported. "Their usual geometric precision is degrading. Time to implement protocol resonance." General Chen nodded. "Activate the quantum field generators. Let's see how their crystalline forms handle some carefully tuned frequencies." Throughout the solar system, hidden platforms began emitting precise quantum vibrations, calibrated to interact with Nexarian biology in subtle but devastating ways. To their sensors, it would appear as random background noise, but their bodies would tell a different story. Aboard the flagship, Zarkax struggled to maintain his composure as reports flooded in. Scout ships reporting phantom energy signatures. Patrol vessels detecting impossible gravitational anomalies. Communication arrays picking up fragments of signals that seemed to contain meaning but dissolved into noise when analyzed. High Commander, his chief medical officer approached, her crystalline form showing signs of stress fractures. "We're seeing an alarming increase in structural instability among the crew. The absence of normal environmental feedback is causing cascade failures in our crystalline matrices." Before Zarkax could respond, every screen in the command center suddenly activated, displaying normal human military communications for exactly 3.14 seconds before going dark. When they reactivated, all system readings had shifted by precisely one quantum state, a change that should have been physically impossible. In her mountain laboratory, Dr. Santos watched the Nexarians' deteriorating condition with clinical interest. Their entire evolutionary history has shaped them to expect constant feedback and response, she explained to her team. Every unanswered question, every unexplained phenomenon, every sensor ghost creates psychological stress that manifests as physical damage. The quantum displays showed Nexarian ships beginning to cluster together, abandoning their usual precise formations for defensive groupings. Their legendary discipline was cracking under the strain of facing an enemy that refused to behave according to any known pattern. "General," Santos called out, "we're seeing exponential growth in the structural damage. The psychological impact is literally shaking them apart at the molecular level." Chen studied the data with satisfaction. Excellent. Initiate Phase 3. Let's show them what happens when you threaten a species that spent centuries preparing for exactly this kind of confrontation. Across the solar system, new protocols activated. Quantum field generators began creating localized distortions in spacetime, causing Nexarian sensors to report contradictory readings. Automated platforms generated artificial gravitational waves that seemed to follow no physical laws. And through it all, humanity remained silent, invisible, watching as their enemies slowly crumbled under the weight of their own fear and confusion. In a moment of clarity, Zarkax realized the horrible truth. They weren't fighting a conventional war at all. The humans had turned the very nature of Nexarian biology against them, using silence and uncertainty as weapons more devastating than any physical attack. His own crystalline form creaked with spreading fractures as he faced the possibility that they had grotesquely underestimated humanity's technological advancement and strategic capabilities. But it was already too late. The third phase of humanity's defense had begun, and the mighty Nexarian fleet was about to learn that sometimes the most effective weapon isn't the one that destroys your ships, it's the one that makes you destroy yourself. Echoes of fear. Sub-Commander Rental stood before the flagship's command council, her crystalline form showing visible signs of degradation as she delivered her report. 3 more patrol squadrons have gone silent in the outer system, she announced, her voice carrying harmonic distortions of stress. When we received their final transmissions, they were pursuing what they claimed were massive energy signatures. We found only empty space. High Commander Zarkax's once pristine crystalline structure now bore a network of hairline fractures. "Show me their sensor logs," he demanded, watching as the holographic display materialized before the council. The data made no sense. Impossible readings, phantom energy signatures, gravitational anomalies that defied known physics. "Sir," Fleet Admiral Kelvor interjected, his form vibrating with barely contained anxiety, "we must consider withdrawal. Something is very wrong here. The humans' capabilities far exceed our intelligence estimates. Withdraw." Zarkax's form darkened with anger. "Before a species that refuses to even acknowledge our presence, the Empire does not retreat from shadows and censor ghosts." Deep within Quantum Command, General Chen watched the exchange through their quantum-shifted surveillance systems. "They're starting to turn on each other," she observed. "Time to increase the pressure. Initiate protocol battle." Throughout the Nexarian fleet, communication systems began experiencing subtle distortions. Orders arrived slightly different from how they were sent. Physician reports showed discrepancies that grew larger with each relay. The rigid hierarchy of the Nexarian military began to fray as confusion and doubt spread through the ranks. In her laboratory, Dr. Santos monitored the deteriorating psychological state of the Nexarian command structure. "Their military doctrine requires absolute certainty," she explained to her team. "Every contradiction, every unexplained phenomenon, every communication failure forces them to question their most basic assumptions. The psychological strain is literally tearing their crystalline forms apart." Aboard the flagship, the command council's debate had devolved into chaos. The humans must have developed some kind of quantum phase technology. One officer insisted, his form showing severe structural damage. "These readings suggest they're operating just slightly out of sync with normal spacetime." "Impossible." Another countered, crystal edges dulling with fatigue. "No species at their technological level could master such capabilities. There must be another explanation." Zarkax watched his officers argue, feeling more fractures spread through his form with each passing moment. Their mighty fleet, capable of reducing entire worlds to ash, was being undone by an enemy they couldn't even detect. The human silence had created a void that his officers were filling with their own fears and theories, each more disturbing than the last. In Quantum Command, Chen received an urgent report from the deep space monitoring stations. "General, we're detecting significant structural instability in multiple Nexarian vessels. Their crystalline hull materials are beginning to show the same degradation patterns we've observed in their bodies. Chen allowed herself a grim smile. Their ships are partially biological, grown from the same crystalline materials as their bodies. The psychological stress isn't just affecting the crews, it's spreading to their technology. She turned to her communications officer. Signal all quantum platforms. Begin Phase 4. Across the solar system, carefully hidden quantum generators activated new protocols. The fabric of space-time around the Nexarian fleet began to fluctuate in ways their sensors could detect but couldn't explain. Gravitational waves seemed to carry echoes of massive fleet movements, yet visual scans showed nothing. Communication arrays detected fragments of tactical transmissions that hinted at vast human armadas maneuvering just beyond their perception. In the flagship's command center, Zarkax received increasingly desperate reports. Ships were reporting equipment failures that engineering teams couldn't explain. Crew members were experiencing temporal perception distortions. Some officers claimed to hear impossible sounds in the vacuum of space, their crystalline forms resonating with frequencies that shouldn't exist. High Commander, Sub-Commander Rental approached, her once elegant form now riddled with stress fractures. We're detecting a massive energy buildup throughout the system. Our sensors suggest, Sir, they suggest we're surrounded. Zarkax studied the sensor readings, his fractured form creaking with the strain. The humans had somehow turned the entire solar system into a weapon, using their own psychology against them with devastating effectiveness. For the first time in the Empire's history, they faced an enemy that didn't follow any known rules of warfare, an enemy that had defeated them without firing a single conventional shot. As his command structure crumbled around him, Zarkax faced a terrible realization. They had come to conquer a primitive species, only to find themselves trapped in a carefully constructed psychological nightmare. And Phase 4 was only beginning. Breaking point. The crystalline surface of High Commander Zarkax's command throne had begun to cloud and crack, reflecting the deteriorating mental state of its occupant. Throughout the flagship's bridge, the once pristine forms of his officers showed similar signs of breakdown. Their structures riddled with stress fractures, their usual brilliant clarity dulled by fear and uncertainty. High Commander, Navigation Officer Selmix reported, her voice carrying harmonic distortions of pure terror. We're detecting impossible things. The void between planets seems to be watching us. Our sensors suggest vast fleets moving through quantum states we didn't know existed. The humans have turned space itself against us. Deep within Quantum Command, General Chen watched the Nexarian fleet's disintegration with clinical detachment. Status report on Operation Coastlight, she ordered. Colonel Santos gestured at the quantum displays, showing the complex web of human forces moving invisibly through dimensional corridors. All fleet elements are in position, completely undetectable to Nexarian sensors. The quantum field generators are operating at maximum efficiency. Their entire command structure is showing signs of imminent collapse. Excellent. Chen nodded. Begin the final phase. Let's show them what happens when you threaten a species that spent centuries preparing for exactly this moment. Across the solar system, humanity's hidden defensive grid activated its endgame protocols. Quantum generators began creating carefully calibrated distortions in spacetime, designed to interact with the Nexarians' crystalline technology in devastating ways. Their sensors detected phantom energy signatures that suggested human weapons platforms had somehow been hidden in plain sight throughout their territory. Their communication arrays picked up fragments of tactical data that hinted at vast armies maneuvering just beyond their perception. Aboard the flagship, Zarkax received the final, crushing report from his chief scientist. Sir, the officer's form was so degraded it barely held its shape. We've confirmed that the humans aren't using any technology we understand. They've mastered quantum manipulation at a level that makes our most advanced systems look primitive. They're not fighting us. They're toying with us. Before Zarkax could respond, every screen in the command center suddenly activated. For exactly 3.14159 seconds, They displayed sensor data suggesting they were surrounded by the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. When the screens returned to normal, there was no trace of the readings, but the psychological damage was done. In her mountain laboratory, Dr. Elena Santos studied the final data streams from their quantum surveillance network. The cascade failure has reached critical levels, she reported. The Nexarians' crystalline biology requires constant, predictable feedback from their environment. Our strategy of silence and misdirection hasn't just confused them. It's literally destroying their ability to maintain physical cohesion. Through quantum-shifted sensors, humanity watched as the mighty Nexarian fleet began to break apart. Ships clustered together in defensive formations, their crews too terrified of the void to maintain proper military spacing. Communication channels filled with increasingly panicked reports of impossible phenomena. The rigid hierarchy of their military doctrine crumbled in the face of an enemy that refused to behave according to any known pattern. General Colonel Santos called out urgently, "We're detecting a power surge in the flagship. They're preparing for emergency temporal translation." Chen allowed herself a small smile. "Right on schedule. Signal all quantum platforms. Execute final resonance." Throughout the solar system, hidden quantum generators synchronized their outputs, creating a complex interference pattern that interacted with the Nexarians' crystalline technology at the subatomic level. To their sensors, it appeared as if the very fabric of space-time was rejecting their presence. On the flagship's bridge, Zarkax made the hardest decision of his career. "All vessels, emergency withdrawal," he ordered, his once commanding voice now fractured with harmonic distortions of defeat. "The humans, they're not what we thought. They're not primitive at all. They're something else entirely." As the Nexarian fleet engaged their temporal drives, struggling to escape the psychological nightmare they'd found themselves trapped in, General Chen stood in quantum command, watching humanity's greatest victory unfold. Without firing a single conventional shot, they had defeated an empire that had conquered thousands of worlds. "Send word to the President," she ordered. "The Nexarian threat has been neutralized. And more importantly, we've sent a message to any other empire that might think of Earth as an easy target. We're not primitive. We're not helpless. We're humanity, and we've learned to turn silence itself into a weapon." In the depths of space, the once mighty Nexarian fleet fled in terror from an enemy they never truly saw, leaving behind only clouds of crystalline dust, the physical remnants of their shattered pride and broken certainty. Their empire had come expecting an easy conquest of a primitive world. Instead, they had learned that sometimes the deadliest force in the universe isn't the enemy you can see. It's the one that hides in silence, waiting to turn your own fears against you. Earth had won its first interstellar war without firing a shot, using psychology and quantum physics as weapons more devastating than any conventional arsenal. And in doing so, they had ensured that the galaxy would never again mistake humanity's silence for weakness.